Welcome to episode 2 of the West End Ridecast. Pretty excited. We're on our e-bikes today. That will be one of the topics. We're going to touch base on Rocky Mountain. We're going to touch base on suspension, setup, and difference between progressive and linear. And we'll probably come up with a couple other topics because we want this ride to go on for a little bit.
Yep.
We enjoy riding bikes.
That's right.
So yeah, we'll timestamp some stuff in the description, and you'll be able to pick and choose what you want to listen to, or just listen to the whole thing or watch the whole thing, because we're riding cool trails on cool bikes.
Yeah, our plan today is to ride a little bit of the... We're not afraid of climbing because we're on our e-bikes, basically.
Now, to be fair, I have climbed this in reverse on the analog bike.
Well, we played around on e-bikes.
We did
last fall, but that's another story some other time. But yeah.
Okay, so yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the trails, and we're going to start out with Rocky Mountain and what's gone on with them. So, for those who don't know, Rocky Mountain has now been sold. It is official. There are new owners. The name of the group is... What's the name of the group again, Brandon?
Chaos Sports, Inc.
Chaos Sports, Inc. So, it's a group of 3 individuals from the Montreal area. All of them have been involved in the outdoor sports or bike world for a while. One of them is a founder of Maui Bikes, which is a Canadian-based e-bike company. Also was involved in the ski industry, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, Raccoon Skis.
Yep. And then another worked in marketing for like North Face and Oakley, a couple of bigger brands there. So marketing should be pretty good. And then the third one was
North American Distribution.
Yeah, North American Distribution. So that's a lot of positives for Rocky Mountain, with their new owners having a good amount of experience in the field. So we're pretty excited about that. Rock crawls are a fun thing. Woo! So what does that mean for Rocky? Basically, they are continuing operations as a brand, as we expected. There's a lot of the core team from like a design and development standpoint is still there. National sales manager is still there. And they're going to be basing design out of Vancouver. So where the bikes have already been designed, tested. You know, Whistler Bike Park is a big testing ground for Rocky, and sounds like that'll continue. So that's exciting news. Anything to add, Brandon, on Rocky?
No, I think we knew something was going to happen there, and it did. And I think it's a benefit for the bike community.
For sure. Yeah, a brand with a long history, one of the oldest brands in the world, if not the oldest brand in the world from a mountain bike manufacturing standpoint. So it's really good to know that they're still around and still going to make really rad bikes. How about that view, folks? How about that view? So for those who don't know, we're riding RAMBA trails. RAMBA is a system in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan between Ishpeming and Negaunee.
Well, those climbs are technically not easier with an e-bike.
No, they still have some problem spots. So I was just telling the fine folks about RAMBA.
Yep.
That this is located between Negaunee and Ishpeming in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, not too far from the city of Marquette that has the NTN North Trails and South Trails. And there's not far from Harlow Lake. RAMBA does boast nearly 80 miles of single track. A lot of it built in a mining community. You can see tailing piles from the mine over there. But we have some pretty amazing vistas, some really fun terrain. There's spots where averaging over 200 feet of climbing per mile is not hard to do, and it's steep technical climbing, not fire road, not easy switchback stuff. There's no free trail out here. It makes you work for it.
Yep.
Even on
e-bikes.
Because you still have to be technically sound.
Yep. Your body position has to be right. You still got to worry about pedal placement, going over roots and rocks.
Yep.
None of that changes.
No. It's still a bike to ride, and it still can be challenging. So that basically wrapped up Rocky.
Yep.
Moving forward, sounds like it's all great news, and we're excited to see what transpires. Next subject is actually, you were just touching on it, e-bikes.
E-bikes, yeah.
So we'll talk about e-bikes, and we're going to talk about pluses and minuses, why you may or may not consider getting an e-bike.
Yeah, so which bike are you riding?
So I'm on the Pivot Shuttle AM, the team edition with the race motor and carbon wheels. I did just change out to a Fox 38 for it instead of the 36. And then I'm running the Vittoria Mazza Race Enduro tire. It's a fairly heavy tire with the nice armor on the top of the tread and the sidewalls, so it's kind of like having a built-in like rim protector.
Yeah. I mean, we can go in on the benefits of running e-bikes, but running a beefier tire with really good grip is one of the benefits.
It's one of the benefits, yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about efficiency as much.
Yeah, it's heavier, so what?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can have traction and trust that things are going to be amazing.
Yep.
Okay, so reasons for people to maybe not get an e-bike. Cost is some of it.
Money.
Yeah. And I guess it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
If you're in terrain that's not super hilly and, it's not going to be a great benefit, then I can understand,
It wouldn't be the one bike. If I could only have one bike in terrain, if I could only have one bike period, it wouldn't be the e-bike personally.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I love riding my e-bike, and there's a lot of reasons I choose to ride the e-bike versus one of my acoustic or analog bikes throughout the summer. I typically put less miles on my e-bike than pretty much any of the others, including the single speed. And that surprised me because I kind of thought that once I was getting on an e-bike that I would not want to ride my acoustic bikes as often, and that has not been the case.
No.
So what I find, there's a couple reasons I go to the e-bike from a training standpoint. One of them is, we're going to take the left line here. Whee! One of them is that I can keep myself at a low heart rate throughout the ride. So the advantages of keeping a low heart rate throughout the ride are endurance and fat burning. So if we can stay in a zone 2 or an L2, our body is consuming fat as its energy source. Once we get out of zone 2 and we're into zone 3, we're starting to burn carbohydrates. This is why we want things like goos and gels, different snacks to keep us energized and going along the ride, because we need that sugar intake, we need those carbohydrates. And that's all well and good, but getting out of zone 2 does not help us when we're trying to build our endurance and use our fat storages as energy. And typically speaking, when we're trying to build endurance, 80% of our training should be in zone 2. So most of the time you're training, whether it's running, riding, whatever, if you're going for endurance, you need to keep your heart rate in zone 2. Now, we'll talk about zone 2. You can wear a heart rate monitor. You can use things like a cycling computer that helps show the heart rate. And I have one here. It shows I'm currently at 119 beats a minute, which is just out of zone 1. So if I'm looking for a long ride to build my endurance, I need to be in that lower heart rate zone. So the only tricky part is heart rate monitors, cycling computers, and power meters don't truly know your zone 2.
Yeah.
Your zone 2 is more determined by our breathing, right?
That's the easiest way to figure it out, yeah.
Yeah. So if we figure out, okay, I'm able to ride and talk and have a conversation,
Yep.
likely I'm in zone 1 or zone 2.
Yeah.
As soon as I have to start
Breathing,
taking breaks between my words, I'm getting into zone 3 and my body is switching over to burning carbohydrates.
Yep.
Now, research shows it can take up to a half an hour to get your body to switch back to burning our fat reserves. So truly, if the goal is to maintain a low heart rate, getting into a higher heart rate, even for a short time, can actually be detrimental to that goal.
Yeah, the goal would be to maintain that zone 2 heart rate for the entirety of your training interval that day.
Yeah.
Not get outside, because the moment you get outside, your body wants to switch back over to that sugar burning mode.
Yeah. And then once it does, if you're in a zone 2 2-hour event that day, and half an hour of that is trying to switch back, you're losing a lot of the actual benefits of training in zone 2.
Yep.
So if you're riding in terrain that is flatter, less technical, and it's easy for you to maintain a zone 2, that's great. Keep it up. And, you know, is an e-bike something that you necessarily need to look at? No. The reason to look at it is they're fun. It does open up, you know, trail systems in other areas that you're not familiar with. So if we're visiting somewhere, Brandon, what's a great idea?
Well, if you rent an e-bike if you don't have one.
Yeah, give it a shot. Rent one.
It'll let you, especially if you're out riding multiple days, where maybe a couple of those days you ride your regular bike, but one of those days you rent an e-bike from somewhere, where helps you keep that heart rate down a little easier. It can act as a little bit more of a recovery day, but you're still going to be able to do, well, you'll do more miles.
Typically speaking, yeah, that's accurate. So on Monday, I had a day off from the shop, and so I chose to take the e-bike out, and I rode the first loop out of Jackson Mine Park of the local famous race, the Margie Gessick. And I did this at a zone 2 heart rate. This ride was, I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 feet of climbing per mile over technical terrain. Oh, I've got a rattling piece of equipment.
Oh, power more.
We'll fix this. No more rattle. So yeah, that was over 26 miles of technical terrain. Some of the most challenging climbs and trails in the interior of the RAMBA system. But because I was on the e-bike, it allowed me to keep an overall zone 2. The other thing is it was 88 degrees that day.
Yeah.
And riding when it's 88 degrees in this area with the humidity can be really taxing and really tiring. So without the use of the e-bike, I would not have been able to cover that distance with the temperatures the way they were and feel good afterwards. So from a training standpoint, it can absolutely make sense to get an e-bike and utilize it to stay in that zone 2. In fact, rumor has it that most pro teams right now are doing training on e-bikes.
Yep. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a pro cycling athlete that doesn't use an e-bike in some way.
Yeah. So then let's talk about it from an enduro standpoint. I mean, if you're pedaling yourself up and riding on descents, enduro style riding,
Yep.
an e-bike is quite nice for those days you want to get as many runs in as possible.
Yeah, if you they talk Benson grade laps here in Marquette or going up to Copper Harbor, going to East Bluff.
Yeah.
E-bikes are awesome.
Yeah, we used ours in Lake Leatherwood in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And it was, I mean, I think we did 6 or 7 runs. Pedaling up, descending, pedaling up, descending. And it was just nice. And, I mean, while I had the e-bike on the trip to Bentonville and Eureka Springs, I actually only put 37 miles on the e-bike and 115 miles on the acoustic bike. So,
but having the e-bike, it gave you that ability to ride those trails on days where it would have been much more difficult.
Yeah.
On your regular bike.
Well, and especially the second day, I did a 40-miler on my Element.
Yeah.
And I was actually behind my wife while she was riding her e-bike to, stay with the group. And the downside was I was behind her on some of the descents. Mm-hmm. And so she was going slower than I would want. And so I would lose touch with the front 2 people. And then because she's on an e-bike, she's able to just motor on up the hill.
Yeah.
And so I'm working to stay with her. And so for about 45 minutes or so, I was doing hill repeats or intervals on the second day of riding.
Right.
And so the next 2 days, I did ride the e-bike, and it was a great recovery. It allowed me the last day to do a 41-mile loop on the back 40.
Yep.
And feel good while doing it.
Right.
I averaged like 9.5 miles an hour for that 41 miles. So, quick recap on pros. Great for recovery rides. Great for L2 easy heart rate days for hours. And they're just darn fun.
Well, and that's, to me, for me, that's why I have one. It's, having people be like, whoa, why you have all these different bikes? And it's because each bike gives me a different experience.
Yeah. It's like if you're a golfer, you don't play with one club.
Right. And now there's going to be people that are going to be like, well, you know, I can't afford that, and that's totally understandable.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and that's where I would still say, after having the e-bike, if I had to, I would only have an e-bike and a shorter travel trail bike.
Yeah.
Those would be my two bikes.
Yep.
A longer travel e-bike that lets me go put in those miles, lets me, like you said, do some laps on some of these, like Copper Harbor or Benson Grade. But then I got that shorter travel, super capable acoustic bike, regular bike, that I can go and just ride.
Yep. So, negatives to e-bikes. Some of it can be cost. They start out at a higher price point. Education on e-bikes, where you can ride them, where you can't ride them, and what classes you can and can't ride.
Yep.
In this area, anything class 1 can go on any of the trail systems and even state-run DNR land.
Yeah. I'm going to counter against the cost just a little bit.
Yeah.
You can get, like my bike that I'm riding, the Shuttle LT,
Yep.
was a ride build,
Yep.
and cost was $5,500.
Well, and that's fair. The challenging part, I think, is there's a lot of people who think about a $3,000 bicycle
Oh,
and think that that's a lot of money.
yeah.
For a bike.
Yes, yeah.
And in a way, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong.
But, I mean, the one I'm on retailed at $14,000, and
Yeah.
people think that's absolutely insane. And they may not be wrong.
Right.
But what I do like about it is we're climbing one of the longest, hardest climbs in the interior loop of Ramba.
Yep. Snake's Back to Broke Bike.
To Brokeback.
Broke Back, yeah.
We're gonna descend Brokeback.
You're
My
right.
heart rate is 137, which
Yep.
is still zone 2.
129 and we haven't stopped.
Right. All right. So that's e-bikes. So we're going to talk through this section here. This is a really chunky, high-speed descendy section. Woohoo! It is a blast to rip. Just try to keep momentum going. Pop the bike up and over roots. Working a little bit. Heart rate's coming up now because I want it to. Oh yeah. Here we go. Back in skittering through the mud. Up and over. This climb is a challenge partway down this descent. Even on the e-bike, my heart rate's coming up because I'm working harder, trying to maintain this bit. Have some good chunk, gets a bit slick through here. Right through the mud in the spring. By the time fall comes around, that's not there. And getting into the last section of the descent. Come in hot, drop it. Woo! And the last couple corners, we're out. Whew. 172, well, it's 71. How was that?
Great.
That was fun.
Yeah, the mud spots cleared up some.
Yeah, a couple of little wet spots yet, but not bad. We both caught our breath again.
Yeah, because we actually did have to work on that way down.
Yeah. Hello.
The bugs decided to come out today.
Yeah,
They're
they
here.
did.
I know.
So yeah, I mean, that's one of the points on e-bikes, I guess. We haven't totally summarized like I thought maybe, but one of the things that we didn't touch base on is when descending on an e-bike, you still got to work.
You still need that fitness of being able to stand in that upright position, taking those hits on the way down with the lower body and the upper body, moving your body position around, moving the bike around.
Yep. And it's not just on descents.
No, it's not.
It's trail riding, it's technical climbing.
Yep.
You still have to get your basics down. You still have to get, you know, your elbows down on the climbs, get your body weight forward, and you're moving something heavier. I find the first few rides on the e-bike, my upper body feels more tired than my legs. I kept my heart rate in a zone 2, my legs were doing less work, but my upper body feels more fatigued moving a heavier bike. And this is what, I think this one's probably in the neighborhood of 50 pounds with the heavier tires on there, 48 with the stock, but these tires are 14 ounces heavier than the stock tires. So.
And another thing, like I don't want to get super deep into it, but you know, there is coming from, you know, a coaching fitness background and skiing, there is such a thing as central nervous system fatigue. Yeah. And you still get that on this bike.
Yes, you do.
Like your body will feel totally fine, but there's that brain part of the moving from your brain out to your hands and your legs to make moves. It's tired. It's like, I'm done thinking about super steep, techie, rocky.
Well, and that's where it gets worse, is if you're in the technical climbing or technical descending or technical trail riding. It's a lot easier on you know, flat or smoother trails. You don't get the fatigue near as much, but if you're riding some of the techie stuff like we are, that becomes a real part of it. And I mean, that was one thing with that ride I did on Monday. I was out there for, I want to say 3 or 4 hours, I don't remember exact, but in that heat, riding technical terrain, I got done and I felt mentally tired.
Yeah.
Yep.
We did a long ride. You and I, we did the south side, so that it's almost.
Basically, we did close to the last 20 of Margie. We missed one section
out to Suicide Hill.
Yep.
But we got done with that day, and I was physically fine, but my brain was good. like I was good.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So what's our next topic? Well, let's summarize e-bikes.
Okay.
Get one or not get one? Yes, get one.
Yeah, get one.
I hear some people say, I need to wait till I need one, or I want to wait till I'm older.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, that's all fine. That's well and good. But don't look at getting an e-bike as a weakness. It is a training tool.
It will make you better.
It will make you better. You learn to ride at a higher pace, which makes your bike handling skills improve as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, I say get one, enjoy it. You're still out there riding a bike. It's a lot of fun. So there.
Yeah, the only reason you wouldn't is simply the money part, which is totally understandable.
Yep. So if it's in the budget, get an e-bike, live your life, have fun, be on trails.
Yep.
All right, next topic, Brandon. What are we going into?
Suspension, I think.
Suspension. All right.
I think this is one of those parts of mountain biking. I think it honestly is the most complicated part of mountain biking.
So when you say that, what do you mean? What makes suspension complicated?
So let's talk about when I moved up here. Before I met Spencer, I had an Ibis Ripmo.
Yep, good bike.
Good bike. DW Link. But I did set up my sag for, per the specs. Everything was set up there. Where I struggled was understanding the difference between compression and rebound.
Yep.
How to adjust those things for the type of riding I was doing. And Generally, I was just making clicks, you know, based, you know, I don't know, I watch YouTube videos and people would try to explain to me, but I couldn't feel the things that they were talking about, I guess.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about compression and rebound. And we're gonna break it down as simply as possible, but we'll even cover high speed, low speed, rebound, and compression. So compression is how a damper is where you set your compression. The damper restricts the amount of oil flow through valving and affects how quickly your suspension will move into its travel. There's a high speed and a low speed. Low speed compression is typically looked at your small bumps, little roots, rocks. Your high speed compression is your bigger hits, medium to large, with either big rocks, roots, drops, jumps, things like that. How easy will your suspension move through the travel if it's set up proper with a proper sag and a proper compression? It should be challenging to bottom out your suspension, in theory. But that gets into linear versus progressive, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Rebound, on the other hand, is how fast your bike or your suspension will recover from that compression. If the rebound is set too high, it'll come out of that travel too quickly and give you almost like a bucking sensation.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, it'll feel really bouncy.
Yeah, the fork would feel like it springs you up off of an obstacle, and the shock would almost feel like it springs you up off the saddle. So having your rebound set too slow, the suspension will not recover from that compression quick enough for the next bump.
Yeah,
So the first bump probably feels good. It feels plush, feels controlled, but then as you go over successive bumps, the suspension feels stiffer.
This is where I got messed up in the past, where my suspension felt rough to me and I thought I had too much compression, when really I was packing my fork and my shock out, which was taking me down into the deeper part of the travel, which is much harder to move.
Yep. So basically, you were doing the opposite.
Yes.
By giving yourself less compression. It was moving further into the travel, but not coming back out of it.
Yep.
Thus
giving me that real harsh feeling.
Yep, and that's what we call packing in. So you're only working in a small portion of the travel.
Yeah.
So we ideally want our rebound set high enough to rebound quickly, but not spring the tires up off the ground when we're testing it unweighted.
Right.
And by that, we just push quickly down on either the handlebars and release, or down on the saddle and let it up quickly to see if that tire's popping up off the ground. So
yeah,
your compression being too open can cause bottom out. Compression being too closed, the suspension will feel stiff, and it almost feel like your suspension hits a wall and just stops.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of overview of it, and that's where I had a lot of struggle. Ooh, Spencer's got it. I should have been wider on that. New section of trail for us, so.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ridden this new trail. Ramba just put this in within the last week or so.
Yeah.
I don't even believe they've named it yet.
No.
But fun fact, it is one of the only machine-built trails in the full Ramba system that is somewhere around 80 miles.
Yay. Yeah, they put in, I think, an A and a B line.
That was a nice solid hit at the bottom.
Ooh. Tricky.
Got a little bit of a bong off the front wheel.
Boy.
Yeah. Even though it's machine built, still very Ramba-esque. That was fun. So yeah, suspension setup. First you get your sag set right. Most companies are talking 30% sag in the rear with a 15-20% sag in the front while seated. If you're standing neutral on the bike, 30% in the rear, 30% in the front for sag. So that's the first thing you set. Now you set that with your compression as open as possible and your rebound as fast as possible, so the suspension can freely move. Once you get your sag set, that's when you move on to setting your rebound and your compression.
And that depends on the damper you have in your bike.
Yeah, and the terrain you're riding.
Terrain you're riding.
So, you know, slower tech like that, my rebound was a touch fast for what we were just riding. But for the higher speed descent on broke bike, the rebound was perfect. So that for those higher speed multiple hits, the bike didn't get overwhelmed, recovered well, and I was able to maintain control of the bike throughout that full descent. So that was fun. So once you get your rebound set, you set your compression. Sometimes this is you play with it along the way. We recommend finding a section of trail and just repeating that section of trail and making one change at a time to the settings. One change in rebound, and that's it. If it doesn't feel better, change it back. One change of compression. If it doesn't feel better, change it back or do another click. One of the ways I can tell if the fork rebound is good on a lot of the Fox is you'll get that little noise off of a small compression. If you can get that while setting your fork, chances are your rebound and compression are at a very good baseline. So that's why suspension setup is as important as it is, because without it set right, your bike could feel bouncy or like you're riding a brick.
Yep.
And full suspension bikes aren't typically supposed to feel like that.
Which, yeah, doesn't affect just descending, it's your pedaling as well. My rear shock was off on my Firebird the other day, and when I went back and checked, I was running too much sag. And once I fixed everything, completely changed the way the bike pedaled.
Right.
And there might be a question of, well, how do I know where to start with my compression and rebound settings?
Well, and that's, again, dependent upon the damper that your fork or shock have. Typically, from a high, let's talk about rebound, a high-speed rebound. Typically start that in around the middle. Unless you're lighter weight, then only like if the rebound high speed rebound has 8 clicks, if you're a lighter weight rider, set that at 2 clicks from full open.
Yep.
And if you're on the heavier side, like approaching the 260, 280, 300 pound mark, then you're probably going to have that high speed rebound set closer to the 6 to 7 clicks from full open.
Yeah.
On the low speed rebound, there tends to be more adjustment clicks in there. I typically, being around 200 pounds, will set my rebound at about 13 clicks on the fork, the Fox factory forks, from full open. But again, you just want to make sure that the tire's not springing up.
Yeah.
Rear rebound is usually 2 to 3 clicks for lighter weight riders, and upwards of 7, 8 for heavier riders. Again, that's from full open. Compression, depending on where you're riding. So us riding in RAMBA, I really like my low speed compression on the fork to be softer. So I don't get a lot of chatter from the small bumps like the roots and rocks that we consistently have in this trail system. And then on the high speed compression, I'll typically run that about 3 to 4 clicks from full open, giving me good support for some of those slow higher impact hits like the rock rolls.
Yeah.
Or hitting small drops on a techier descent like sissy pants.
Yeah. Well, that's where, like, running, you know, I can't run totally open in RAMBA just because of those bigger roots and rocks. I can feel my tire doesn't want to get up over them.
Yep.
And that's where I know I have to add a little compression.
So are you adding high speed or low speed?
High speed there usually.
Yep, high speed compression for that.
Just
low
one
speed
click.
compression being open, much less of a detriment.
Yep.
It's nice to have that compliance, making the ride more comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I'll also say there are lots of resources online from Fox RockShox on setup, but it really is important that you go to your brand's resources. And I'll just use Pivot as the example because I am a Pivot guy. My bikes are all Pivots.
Yep.
Just the way it is. But they specifically, and Spencer's going to get into this next, is they have a different leverage curve. And they have a specific setup for their shocks and their forks that is different than Fox's.
And their setups are usually very, very dialed.
Yep.
Their out-of-the-box setups on their charts are done very well.
Yep.
It's a great baseline, and in some cases, well, listening to the podcast on the new Firebird, even Eddie Masters, I believe it was,
Yeah.
used the recommended settings
And didn't
change it. He's like,
Didn't change anything.
It felt perfect.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
that can vary depending on terrain, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, so I just don't use, you know, if you have a Giant, first go to Giant's website for your bike and see if they have recommendations. If you have whatever brand. Yeti has an app, I think.
I remember at one time Salsa recommended 30% sag on one side and 25% sag on the other.
Yeah, and that's another we're going to get into leverage curves, but there's a reason why some brands will require different sag amounts.
Yep.
So
now that we've covered compression rebound, if you have questions on those, put it in the comments and we'll answer your questions.
or stop in by Spencer's shop.
Yeah.
And
if you're not
become
in the
friends
area,
like
that's
I
harder.
did.
But yeah, leave us a comment with a question on that suspension setup and we can delve into that a little closer for you. So when we talk about suspension designs or theories for different brands, each brand has an idea of how they want their bikes to ride, the experience the rider gets while being on their product. And that can range anywhere from a very open, linear suspension design to a very progressive, higher ramp suspension design. And a lot of that is based off of where these companies are designed. Like, where are they based? So when we see some brands on the West Coast, they're based there. They have a lot of long fire road climb with steep or loose descent like in California. We tend to see what I call the West Coast riding tune. That's a more linear suspension travel. Linear means if we put 100 pounds on the saddle and it compresses the suspension a centimeter, to get another centimeter out of that suspension travel, it'll take another 100 pounds. So for each 100 pounds we put on there, the suspension compresses a full centimeter. That's a linear suspension. With a linear suspension and good anti-squat characteristics, you get some really neat ride qualities, such as pedaling is efficient while seated, so climbing fire roads, riding trails, seated pedaling because of anti-squat, which is basically the forces put on your pedals that help stop the suspension from compressing. That'll give you, again, good pedaling efficiency while seated. And then as you descend those steeper, loose trails, the bike settles into its suspension travel and gives you a plush, controlled descent. And the bikes can feel pretty playful in that respect as well. So that's the linear suspension travel. Progressive suspension travel, if we put 100 pounds on the saddle and it compresses the suspension a centimeter, to get that second centimeter, we're actually going to need to put 150 pounds, for example, on there. Then to get a third centimeter, we have to put an additional 200 pounds to get the suspension to compress another centimeter. So what this means is when the suspension gets deeper into its travel, it gets harder and harder to compress. Advantages of that style is, A, you still have good pedaling efficiency when seated. But you also have a more supportive suspension design, so if you stand up to pedal like I just did there, the suspension does not want to be active and bounce and wallow through its travel. It squats, gets supportive, and goes. So where that helps us out in the area we ride in is we have a lot of square hits. That's the tire hitting flat on a surface like a root or a rock. If we have a linear suspension design, we'll feel that suspension compress, which kind of feels like it stalls out.
It'll feel soft.
Yep. While it's absorbing that hit.
Yep.
Then we push on the pedals.
Yeah.
That in turn will compress the suspension a little bit more. So if you find that you're riding over roots and rocks on a climb and you feel like the bike doesn't climb up over it well, it's stalling out.
Or you're striking.
Or pedal striking, yep. That's an indication that you have a linear suspension design.
More linear, right. Yep.
So as we get into the progressive, it will be more supportive in that area and help you climb over roots and rocks better.
Yep.
The downside to a progressive one is it will not be as plush.
Right.
And in some cases, it can be a little less playful.
Yep. They'll be a little more planted.
Yep. And not in all cases. I mean, Evil does a really good job with
Yep.
a very progressive suspension on a bike that is like, if you're an old BMX rider,
yeah,
you want to be on an Evil because you're hopping off and jibbing off of stuff and just having a grand old time.
I think the Canfield, the CBF is similar to that as well, correct?
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but because of the area we ride in, we have a lot of that square hit, technical climbing, technical descending. So the bikes that have a more progressive suspension design or are designed to ride in that type of terrain are really what we search out when we're trying to stock bikes in the shop. So that's why we carry the brands we do. You look at, well, from a Scott standpoint, Scott with their twin lock or track lock has a really nice suspension design that allows it to be a little more linear in its full open mode. But then as you use the twin lock or track lock, it either shortens the travel or makes the travel more progressive. So Scotts ride extremely well in this terrain because of that switch on the handlebar. Rocky Mountain, designed to ride Vancouver, North Shore, British Columbia, very technical, rocky, rooty terrain, actually very similar to what we ride in RAMBA. It's just on a bigger scale. Then we look at Pivot. They're designed and ridden a lot in South Mountain. They do other testing in Colorado. So being that they're running on a lot of square hit rocky stuff on South Mountain, their goal is to give you a progressive rear suspension that techie climbs well and keeps the bike planted on descents. They have a lot of loose, over hard, pebbly surfaces. So keeping that bike planted makes a big difference. So that's from our main three brands. They all have different ways of providing us with that riding experience, but they all have the same ethos, so to speak, that matches our terrain extremely well. And that's why we sell the brands we do.
Yeah, and even inside of different suspension designs, again, I'll go back to my Ibis Ripmo that I had before this. The Ibis utilizes Dave Weagle's DW link.
Yep. Pivot uses Dave's DW link as well.
Right, but the bikes both ride different. Their leverage curve, Ibis leans more linear, more towards the linear side.
Yeah, more like that West Coast riding
yes.
style. Yep.
So if you're riding, you know, I would like Copper Harbor or more of the stuff at South Trails, like the bike was fine, but as soon as I got into RAMBA, which is where I do the bulk of my riding, I was having some issues. It wasn't anything serious, but I just realized that it wasn't pedaling as well.
Yeah, it didn't do the climbing out here as well as some of the other more progressive suspension design.
Exactly. So
one of the other things you noticed with that is bottom out was easier.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So when you're running a linear suspension design, it is easier to bottom out that suspension. So that's where we see people start adding volume spacers, and that's try to make the suspension more progressive.
Go.
Oh, I'm going to take the high line.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pause because we want to watch you ride bikes.
This is where the e-bikes, because I could tell, so the motor only assists to a certain cadence.
Yeah.
And I tried to put power down there and the motor didn't want to help me at all.
Yeah, with the Shimano system, you seem to have to downshift a little more frequently. But you know, lean forward and be more aggressive.
Yeah.
Remember,
the people are
e-bike, we still got to use our technique. Oh, there you go.
The people are going to see some lessons.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons we do this.
Yep. Well, and I'm not bashful at all. Like, I moved up here last year and my riding skill was okay, but it wasn't, you know, moved from Wisconsin. We didn't have these trails. And I knew the only way to get better was to put myself around people who are better than me.
So why do you ride with me then?
That's why I ride with you. All right, got that tricky section.
There you go.
Where do you want to go?
I don't care, you're leading.
I can go down.
So yeah, getting your bike set up proper with suspension
I know what I'm gonna
and
do.
picking a bike that has a suspension design that works well in your terrain can be really important.
Yes. There are things you can do with rebound and compression to make your bike, or volume spacers, that if you want it to be more progressive or more linear, it's possible.
Yeah, the only hard part is we're trying to get that out of the suspension,
Yes.
the shock, rather than
The design.
the linkage,
Yes.
the suspension design.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're turning your bike into something it doesn't want to be.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So like I said, there's a little movement in there, but understanding the type of riding that you like to do in the trail system that you ride the most, matching your bike and its capabilities suspension wise to that would be the best case scenario.
Yep. And I would say if you're traveling a lot, you're riding in a lot of different areas, you're typically going to be safer picking a suspension design that is more progressive.
Yes.
Because you're going to have the pedaling efficiency either way. It's just going to be more pedaling efficient on the climbs.
Yeah.
Steeper climbs,
Yeah.
techie climbs, or stand-up pedaling.
Yeah.
So
And
what
then-
other bike setup things are important? Brakes? Tires?
Brakes, tires.
What would you put next after suspension?
Tires. Hands down.
What would it be?
Tires.
Tires. Okay.
Yeah. I think
So-
that tires, having the right tire for the bike that you're on is easily the most cost-effective thing that you can do to make your bike ride as good as possible.
Yep.
And that doesn't always mean the most aggressive tire.
No, in fact, there's a number of bikes that I think come maybe over spec'd on tires.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even look at your Trailcat SL.
Way over. Yeah.
You know, that's got a legit trail tire. I mean, what did that come with? Wasn't it a DHR2 in the front, which is a downhill rear,
Dissector.
and a dissector in the rear?
Yeah.
Those are both fine tires, although I do find the DHR2 to be slower rolling than I like. Not
Yeah.
one of my faves,
Yeah.
but it's still not a bad tire.
Right.
But when we're speccing it on a bike that's going to be made for a lighter weight trail bike, I would almost rather see something like
Recons.
a Recon
Or Forecaster.
or a Forecaster. You are running Icons, and I would make an argument for the Vittoria Sierra on there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that bike I can ride. I can basically ride any trail that I ride, whether it's in RAMBA or if I go over to South Trails, Doctor's Scary, I can ride it on that bike easily.
Yep.
I could probably do it on the Icons. I'm definitely going to be lacking some grip.
Well, and that attests to the confidence, and
Yeah.
some of that is improving your riding
Yeah.
over your riding experience, like we're talking about.
Well, and that's where you watch like these guys. Okay, let's go to YouTube. You watch some of these YouTubers like Sid and Mackie. Let's just use them for example.
Yeah.
Mackie rode the Downeyville Classic, which you have to ride the same bike. You can't change anything. You can't change the tires Or the bike, the wheel's nothing.
Yeah.
And you have to do it for like an enduro stage, a downhill stage, and like a cross-country stage.
Okay.
Can't remember exactly. This guy rode all 3 stages on Aspen STs. In Downeyville.
Yeah.
So, and I can't do that, right? But that tells you, with good technique, a well set up bike,
Yep.
what you can do on these tires.
Yeah,
Where you
especially
don't,
when you have the skill set to
Yeah,
do it, or you trust the tire enough.
right? You don't need to run guys on your trail bike.
No. So what I've typically done is I run a Vittoria Mazda on trail bikes. While it's not the lightest tire out there, it's actually a really fast rolling
Yep.
enduro type tire that I like for the rocky terrain that we have here. When I get on the Element, which is running an Icon, or I get on my single speed El Jefe that's running the Vittoria Mazda, I do notice I am not as confident and cornering. I'll slow down for some of the corners, but the bike is faster rolling overall, and that's giving me the experience that I want out of those bikes. I want them to be faster, more efficient.
Yeah, because we're riding generally it's a more flatter ride, a little. Maybe
well,
not. Well, we're not riding in.
It's less aggressive. We're
less
not,
aggressive.
we're not
Thank you.
riding
Yeah, you're right.
The stuff as gnarly as we
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
But I will say that those 2 tires, I do trust them well enough to ride everything in RAMBA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I may not ride some of the stuff as fast. I may be more tentative in some of the corners from a descending standpoint, but overall I'm going to be more efficient. And so for that bike, I feel like those tires, especially on the single speed running a Vittoria Sierra, it has a lot of traction.
Yep.
And when you have to stand up and pedal on a single speed, you need traction.
Yeah.
So running that tire, I dig it on there. The Icon gives me plenty of grip laterally, great rolling, fast pedaling, not as much pedaling traction on steeper, looser stuff as the Sierra does.
Yep.
But for what I'm using the Element for,
It's fine.
I feel like it's the right
Yeah.
fit. And then on my e-bike, this thing, like I said earlier, I'm running the Vittoria Mazda Race Enduro. 2.4, I have not found a reason to go to 2.6 on stuff lately. Tons of traction, super durable, and I can put the bike through all of the gnarly, nasty stuff and trust the tires aren't gonna give out or flat.
Yep.
So tires can make a huge difference on your ride experience. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I would just challenge people to change it up.
try things.
Try some different stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might find that you really like something else out there. Get some good advice from your local shops. You know, what are they running? Why do they run that tire? What is it about it that they like? You know, ask those questions. If you have questions, again, throw them into the comments.
Yeah.
Here, we'll
Yeah, and yeah, talk to your local people. Don't go off YouTube, because the guys on YouTube, like, we're talking about people who that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, they're at a different level.
That's a whole.
And you look at how a lot of the bikes are reviewed on those channels as well. There's so many of them reviewing bikes from a enduro downhill style of riding, when 90% of you and us are not riding the terrain that they're riding at the speeds that they're riding. While we appreciate their input because they know what they're talking about, I actually like to see reviews in an everyday, the average Joe can say, hey, I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, so yeah, go talk to your local shops and, you know, get their advice. You know, how long have they been running those tires? What do they like about them? But that's one of the biggest upgrades you can make that's not expensive.
What's something you wouldn't upgrade that you'd be like, it's not really necessary. It's not
giving you the bang for the buck type of thing. Oh.
I mean, we said the things like we truly believe if you have the money to do it, like having a good quality set of brakes, having proper tires, good wheels.
Yeah. Oh, you know, okay, here's one of mine. All right, we're going to start riding for this
Yeah,
one. I'm going to
let's
get
do
a
it.
little bit of hate on this.
No way.
Yeah, I'm legit like, all right.
I have no idea what this is gonna be, so I'm excited.
Okay, so I firmly believe that if a bike suspension is set up right, you're running proper tire pressures in the terrain, and you're using proper bicycling techniques, there is no reason virtually that you need a tire insert.
Oh yeah.
Tire inserts are, man, I tell you. So it adds a ton of weight to the bike. You know, in certain cases, I can see some uses, but overall, there's a number of people running tire inserts that really don't need it. And they're like, well, I keep damaging my wheel. Okay, well, what tire pressure are you running? Okay, maybe that's too low. What tire are you running? Okay, maybe that's not the right tire for the riding you're doing. How's your suspension set up? Are you bottoming out too easy? So all of that force is now going into the tire and then it's hitting the rim. So I did a tire pressure calculator from one of the companies we use, and it said I should be running 19 PSI in my tires at 200 pounds with the type of bike I was riding. And I'll tell you right now, if I ran 19 PSI, I would be damaging wheels.
Yeah.
I would be pinch flatting tires. I would be having bad experiences.
Yep.
Also, if I'm running 19 PSI, I can feel my bike almost doing a pedal bob, but it's not in the suspension. It's simply in the tire.
Yep.
So I can't really run that low of a pressure, even if that calculator tells me I should. I've tested it, I've tried it. It doesn't work. If I was, I'd be like, geez, I need to run tire inserts. So, full disclosure, I run my tires typically between 22 at the lowest and 25 PSI.
Yep.
I don't lack for traction. I don't lack for speed. I don't lack for durability. And I don't pinch flat tires or break wheels.
Yeah.
The one time I broke a wheel, I was running a lower tire pressure that was recommended by the manufacturer of the tire.
Oh.
So if you're bottoming out your tires, pinch flatting or denting rims, it might not be a bad idea to look at running tire pressure differently or having your suspension set up properly. Don't go straight to tire inserts.
Yeah.
Now, for extreme downhill enduro, yeah, I can see in some cases.
If you're a bigger guy.
If you're a bigger guy, I can see in some cases, yeah, that could be a benefit.
You know, I could see where if you're a little bit bigger guy, you want to run lower tire pressures for traction and on a maybe a little less grippy tire, so you're trying to gain some rolling resistance or increase or decrease rolling resistance.
Yeah.
There are cases where I can see.
Yep. But in my mind, they are fewer and further between than they should be.
Yeah.
Another case where I think that they can make sense, in some cross-country riding. If you're running a hardtail, I can see like a lightweight tire liner or tire insert being beneficial because you can run confidently knowing you're not going to flat during a stage or a race, because you don't want to do that. I like that thing. That's called the cheese grater. It used to have expanded metal on it and be a lot more sketchy looking. They have since redone it. It's up higher, which actually to me makes it more sketchy. But there's not expanded metal on it anymore. So it's not truly the cheese grater in that respect, but that is one of my favorite features in RAMBA, and I love what they've done with it. So yeah, tire inserts. In most cases, I don't feel tire inserts give you the proper bang for the buck. I think in rare cases, tire inserts are good, but not the bang for the buck.
I did the cheese grater.
Good job. Me too.
I figured I saw your tire tracks.
Oh. Okay, so there's tire inserts.
Yeah, I think you hit it there.
What do you think is something that is...
Well, this one I might catch flack on.
Okay.
I think for most riders, many riders, I'll say many,
Yeah.
especially if you are starting out in mountain biking. Wait a second, I'll wait. Get a little closer to
Keep this spot in a little
Spencer
bit.
on this downhill
Speeds are a
here.
little too high. I can't hear him. Chunky, fun, wicked descent. Okay, you have to repeat that because I didn't hear a word you said.
I was gonna get a little closer to you. Okay, so for many riders, especially if you're starting out in mountain biking,
Yeah.
I do see the benefit in full suspension bikes,
Yep.
but I don't necessarily think you need the highest level suspension build for that bike. Fox, for example, the standard grip and standard float shock on a trail bike, short to mid travel trail bike, they're great. Compression is on a dial. You just dial it in, super easy. Rebound is one click
knob,
at the bottom.
yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that, I'm not saying that there isn't benefit to these better dampers.
No, we know there is.
There is, but when you're starting out, you can't feel the things that those you can't feel the feedback from the trail that the changes those dampers allow you to make.
Sure, yeah.
You won't be able to make them.
What happened, Brandon?
I got in the rut. Listen, if people are gonna know something about me with my biking, I usually fall once every ride.
Yeah. Well, you got that one out of the way.
Yeah,
And actually, it was on probably one of the hardest trails we've done.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Those ruts get in the way. They're a challenge.
So I would argue that if you're starting out buying a bike, and I'm talking to a guy who sells bikes, so
Okay.
he can disagree with me.
No, I don't disagree.
I would buy the lower build and upgrade the wheels. And upgrade brakes. Those are the things I would do. I would put the best brakes, the best wheels you could buy with the entry level, not entry level suspension, but
Okay, so we're talking performance suspension from Fox.
Yes.
As a general
yes,
thing.
Fox Performance.
Yeah.
I would not drop down to, was it the Rhythm?
Yeah. So running a Fox Performance suspension, if a bike comes with that, that's not a bad thing. It actually does perform extremely well.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, it shares the same chassis with the nicer one. So just upgrading the damper down the road can be done.
I did on this bike.
Which you've done on that bike.
Because I found the purpose to having the better damper now.
Yep.
I didn't necessarily when I bought it, but now I can feel things where I can say something to Spencer and Spencer will be like, okay, you need a click of low speed. Okay.
Yeah, so it does come to a point where you start to realize those things, and you know, in fact, a lot of people, when they're starting out, I want you to get something that's in your budget first off.
Yeah.
And so if I ask you, hey, what is your budget for this bike? If you tell me you have a budget of $3,000, my goal is not to sell you a $3,000 bike. My goal is to sell you a bike that's gonna work as good as it can, get you the best value, but allow you to get some of the things that you're going to need.
Yes.
You're gonna need pedals.
You're gonna
need shoes.
A helmet, shoes.
You're gonna need helmet, water bottle cage, and water bottle.
Yes.
I wanna make sure that you're going out there
a multi-tool.
Within your budget, but you're fully set up and ready to go.
Yep.
Not that you need a bunch of other things tacked on to your bike purchase. We just want it so you're going to have the best experience you can have. And that's not everybody needs the top of the line suspension dampers. Not everybody needs the top of the line frames.
Yeah. Carbon handlebars, like that is, the aluminum ones work and it's an easy upgrade in the future.
Yeah. And the things the carbon handlebars do for you is it helps with dampening vibrations.
Yep.
So if you have a suspension that doesn't have a low speed compression to help you with that small bump sensitivity, a carbon handlebar can actually help improve that ride quality.
Yep.
So what you're saying is the thing that you think is not a great dollar bang for your buck value is the suspension does not need to be top of the line when you're just starting out. At some point you'll appreciate the nuances.
You will, if you ride enough, you will appreciate it, and it can be upgraded.
Yep. Okay, anything else that we feel is not a necessity or doesn't give you the bang for the buck? I mean, I honestly don't think of a ton.
No.
There's a lot of really good products out there.
Yep. I think you can get by without buying super expensive nutrition. I mean, if you like it, it's cool, but like nerd clusters work.
So nerd clusters will work for that short burst of sugar. If you're crashing and you need a little boost of sugar energy, the nerd clusters are actually a great bang for your buck. The price per serving is lower, and it gives you more carbohydrate sugars than a lot of the other like more expensive fancy gels, chews, or goos. However, the downside to something like the nerd clusters is they will not give you the electrolytes or other supplements that the body really needs to continue to perform at a higher level. So while some things like you can get through using stuff like the nerd clusters or candies, because they don't have the electrolytes, the other things like scratch chews, hammer gel, glue, they do play their part and they are worth it, but you don't only need to fuel with those.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree. I don't think there's a lot else. Maybe titanium bolt kits.
Titanium bolt kits. They look really nice though.
All right, well, there is some of that. I mean, putting a little bling on the bike.
I guess that's one thing we could talk about is the weight weenie thing.
Yeah.
So there was a trend in the mountain bike community for a very long time about getting as light as possible, as light as possible, as light as possible. And while bikes being as light as possible have advantages in some areas, there are disadvantages. Some of it became reliability, frame cracking issues, things like that.
Yep.
But there's also something, the difference between what I call static weight and then rotating mass.
Yep.
So static weight on a bike, that's things like the frame, the handlebars, some of those things,
Dropper.
you know, dropper post, yeah. Some of those things, yeah, well, weight adds up and can make a difference. And a lighter weight rider will notice a couple pounds of static weight more so than a larger rider. There's something to be said about getting a low rotating mass versus a low static weight. The pivots to me are a great example of that. They don't always come in as light as the Scots or the Rockies from a complete build, from a static weight standpoint.
Right.
But it's where that weight is and how that weight affects the ride quality. So when I think we have like a little extra weight in the frame or frame parts, maybe not the carbon itself, but
Linkages.
some of the linkages, whatever, on bikes, that static weight isn't as important as reducing rotating mass.
Yep.
Getting the static weight down is not nearly as important as getting rotating mass down. So your bike itself can be a little bit heavier, but if you get to a lighter wheel set, lighter tires, that can make a big difference in ride quality. So the trend then went to bikes getting more burly. They got heavier to be more durable, and we're starting to see that trend reversing again to where we start to see bikes being lightweight again and trying to get our weights down, which in my opinion is all well and good. A lighter bike overall can be nice, but you have added weight to a bike, it's nice because you're gaining some stability,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So it's not, ooh.
Well, and yeah.
So yeah, your bike gets lighter, it's inherently gonna move a little bit more underneath you. So in some areas, having a little more weight to the bike can make you feel more stable.
Giving you a little more confidence and yep. I mean, it's why they add weight to downhill bikes.
Correct. Yes. They don't want it to be the lightest thing out there because
Right.
it doesn't need to be. Oh, should we go on that trail? We should.
Go on what?
That trail back there.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, that covers the weight stuff. I mean, you know, changing to titanium bolts and doing everything you can to make the bike as light as possible. If that's what you're into and makes you happy, send it. You know, does it make the difference to most people? No, I would say at higher competition levels, that's where, you know, people can notice it, or over much longer distances, it really can make a difference. You know, using a little bit less power to move the bike for 100 and some miles, yeah, lighter weight helps, especially if you get to a point where you've got to be pushing the bike rather than pedaling it. Pushing a lighter bike is better than pushing a heavier bike, especially uphill.
Well, I hit my head on a tree back there again, so I'm one more knock closer to the new helmet.
Hey, not just on a stick, but like whacked it on a tree?
Yeah, this time I was just kind of leaned into a tree and used my helmet to support my body a little bit.
Oh.
It's a technique I'm developing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of tree assist, but it's typically you use your hand.
Yeah.
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 But
Why use your hand when you have a head?
You know, I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we are almost 14 miles in, and my average heart rate was 107.
Yeah. Yeah. See? And people don't have to listen to us huff and puff
Yeah.
and sniffle the whole time.
Yeah. Well, I'm done with the cold now, so
Well, that's true. What was my excuse?
I don't know.
That's a good topic.
Yeah.
We can talk about the differences in our trail systems.
Between, yeah, north-south,
Yep. Harlow.
Harlow, and then Ramba. All
Yeah.
have very, very different characters.
Yeah. So Ramba is your more traditional, old school, hand-built, technical, rocky, Rudy, harder terrain to ride
Yeah.
overall.
Overall, yeah.
But it draws a lot of people due to its vast trail network, the number of miles, 80.
Yeah, and that
Roughly.
80 miles it's almost like there's a multiplier because the amount of loops that you can create in here are just endless.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can do loops that are under 100 feet of elevation per mile,
Yep.
or loops that are over 200.
Yep.
So then, you know, I think the next one to talk about is the South Trails. So South Trails is probably the most popular in the system and garners the most attention. We see more and more people coming up to ride the Nukamanon Trail Network, or NTN's South Trails, than anywhere.
What's that?
We see more people coming to ride
Yeah.
the NTN South Trails
Yeah,
than any other location.
you do.
And the South Trails has a great mix of, they have a small like bike park that people call South Park,
Yeah, they got the Grom loop that's a very,
beginner friendly,
yep.
and they have a trail network that spans somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 plus miles.
Yep.
Very user friendly, signage is good. The riding that you can get is anywhere from machine built, smooth, flowy stuff to old school, hand built, technical stuff.
Yep.
Then, if you're on the Benson side of things, where you're doing the Benson grade laps, you've got descending trails, downhill trails that range anywhere from beginner to expert level with sizable gaps and drops.
Yeah.
And wood platforms.
Yeah.
So there's really, and then you have Market Mountain there too that does lift service
On
their
weekends, yep.
trails. So the South Trails really has something for everybody and is a fantastically maintained trail
Yeah,
network.
NTN does an amazing job.
Yes. North Trails. For the most part, a bit tamer than the South.
Yep.
Some very nice, easy loops up there. But then you get to trails like Wildcat, Mildcat, Pine Knob,
High knob.
which are quite technical and quite challenging and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I actually probably spend more time at the North Trails than I do at the South Trails.
Yeah.
Then we have Friends of Harlow.
Yeah.
Friends of Harlow, that is typically rockier, more technical, challenging terrain with difficult climbs and some big sketchy descents. Not big as in like miles long, but
these
you have big rock rolls.
Rock rolls.
I mean, there's one that starts above the tree line
Yeah.
and drops in. Like, that's a big,
It's-
intimidating feature.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely, Harlow is the one place in Marquette County that if you can find somebody who knows that system and you can ride with them, like, do that.
Yeah.
Because
The
it's,
stuff they can show you, and, show you lines that's,
yeah. And the trail markings aren't, it's, yeah, you don't always really know where you are in there unless, I don't know, I would try to ride with somebody in there.
but it is a blast if you're up for a challenging technical day. I can tell you there's a lot of times I ride 6 to 9 miles out there and I'm cooked.
Destroyed, yeah.
It's a challenge. Like, it is hard riding, but it is a blast. Dock Knobs, one of my favorite technical trails. Love the sketchy rock rolls on there. Just a hoot.
Yep.
And then you got Top of the World, which is a famous bit of the Margie Gessick where most people walk down it.
Yeah.
And if it's wet, I understand.
Yep.
Riding Harlow in the wet is a whole different experience.
Yeah.
So those are the trail systems. There's something for everybody in a short mileage radius. If you're looking for somebody to take you around, we can do some guided stuff out of the shop at any one of those trail systems. So just reach out and schedule something.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate what we have here.
For sure. We're gonna go
Oh,
this way.
going backwards on whiskey.
Yeah, we're gonna take whiskey. Whiskey is one of my favorite trails out here. I love like the technical rooty aspect of it. So there's a lot of fun on whiskey coming from the right there.
Yeah.
Like, going that direction is a blast as well.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about whiskey is it rides really fun in both directions, and it's a challenge of a different sort. With the roots, I mean, the root systems from these trees really make it a challenge to climb and descend in some of the areas, but I love the challenge of it, and I love every year getting back out here and rediscovering the lines. Can I make this climb this year? It's just a blast for me. This is easily one of my favorite trails in the RAMBA system. It is just a giggle. So here's one of those climbs that can be a challenge on an analog bike or acoustic bike. Definitely feels easier on the Eb. Oh, but you hear that fork working? That means that damper and rebound are doing their jobs. Love it. Oh, this trail is so much fun. What a blast. Might have pulled away from Brandon a little bit there. Brandon, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, he's there.
You're just faster than me.
He's not too far. What a beaut.
You're just faster.
No.
Yeah.
I just had a good run.
There you go.
I mean, as that's one of my favorite trails, though.
Yeah.
Like, I know the lines.
Yeah. I didn't get hung up on anything, just probably didn't ride it as smooth.
Well, that's all right. Because you know what? It's about riding bikes and enjoying your time on them.
Yeah, it's still super fun.
Well, that kind of concludes
Yep.
Ridecast episode 2.
Yep. Yeah, if you all have things you want to hear Spencer and I talk about in future episodes, throw things in the comments. We actually like fighting, so if there's anything controversial, throw it up there.
Yeah.
But the other goal would be to get some other people on here.
Yeah, I think it would be really fun to get some guests on here. So yeah, if you have ideas for guests or you've listened to this and you'd like to participate in a ridecast, you have some stuff you want to talk about, reach out. It'd be fun.
For sure.
But yeah, if you have any more ideas on what we should talk about, drop it in the comments. And we'll make sure we get to as many topics as possible. Not sure how often we're gonna plan to do these. I think if the time presents itself, we're available, and we have relevant things to talk about, it'll make sense to do them as frequently as possible.
Yep.
Well, that was a good ride.
All right.
See you all later.